Alright folks, well, today's a new day on the 200 SX project, the Honda 1986 200XX. We're going to do some maintenance today, so we're going to change the oil finally. I got a brake cable to fix the handbrake, got some oil for an oil change, and I went ahead and bought a sprocket. So now we have a new sprocket for the rear, and hopefully we can go out and maybe get a little bit harder acceleration, a little bit more fun out of it. So that's kind of what we've got on the docket today. We're going to see what we can get done. Well, before we do an oil change, I kind of want to get that started. That's kind of most important to me. We're going to start the engine up and get the engine oil that's already in there warmed up so that it drains out better and we get a more thorough change. And while the engine's warming up, I think we're going to spend a few minutes and try to clean these fenders up. My wife came out and she wasn't overly impressed with the appearance. She said it was much better, but I think I'm going to take and try to wipe this thing down. I've got some shop towels, so I got these pre-wet shop towels, and I'm going to give this thing a bath. It's about 32 degrees outside here in Ohio. And so I'm not going to be outside pressure washing it, but I'll see what I can do to improve the appearance. So I'm going to go ahead and start the four-wheeler, let it warm up, and while it's warming up, try to clean it up a little bit. Alright, well I tried to wipe down this back fender with a cloth and I wasn't getting any action out of the cloth. It wasn't pulling up these stains. So I grabbed a scraper. It does come off. Yeah, I still think the plastic's probably damaged, severely damaged. But I'm going to scrape down the fenders a little bit, try to knock the big chunks off and see if we can improve the appearance. Still letting the four-wheeler warm up, so we got time to kill anyways. Alright folks, I think this thing is warmed up enough. It does appear like I'm having a little bit of a gas leak issue. Something I'll have to look into, but right now we're going to get ready to change the oil. So, get my oil pan and a wrench for the drain plug, and I'll get that off. Just coming over here and opening up the dipstick so I can get a little more ventilation to the crankcase, let the oil flow out. It does look like our gas leak is coming from the fuel lines we put on. I don't know if they're just too big or what, but I guess that's a good issue to have, that it's just from the fuel lines. But I probably will take this fuel tank off real quick just to keep it from leaking. And we are collecting it in our catch pan here, so we will get this fuel out of here, this fuel tank off of here, and get that stopped for now. Look into what's going on. Well, the oil is just about done draining out, so I think it's about time to put the drain plug back in. Check the drain plug over. It's not the magnetic style, but it does have the crush washer for a seal. Cleaned all that up. Just clean it up just a little bit more. Cleaned up all the surfaces that would be crushed with crush washer, and now it's ready to go back in. This quad should take 2 quarts, but since we're filling it in the check area, we can just put the dipstick in and check it. It's going to take close to 2 quarts. I don't know that it'll take all 2 quarts. So now I'm just going to check the oil one more time. I don't think it has to be filled all the way to the top line, but we want it to be in the window range on the dipstick. So tighten it up, loosen it out. And we've got it just about to the full mark, so that's good. Go ahead and put this plug back in here, and we can start it back up. We don't have the fuel tank on because of that leak that we got to look at, but we can just start it up, let the oil mix up a little bit, and then we'll see if it got any lower, or if it got any dirtier really quick because of the oil quality. So after the little run up, I wiped it down a couple of times, and it's at the lower half of the window, so I'm just going to put just a little bit more oil in it, and I'll keep some oil, because I'm not really sure the oil consumption of this four-wheeler. We haven't obviously owned it very long, so we need to kind of keep an eye on that. We'll have some oil around if we need to add it, but I think my mess should be in better shape now. So one of the other things I wanted to take care of in this episode was the brake cable. So the brake cable that came on the four-wheeler for the Handbrake, the hand actuator brake, is pretty frozen. If you take and you try to pull on it, it takes quite a bit of force. I mean, it takes quite a bit of force to get that to move at all. Not enough that you can do it by hand and return. So I went and purchased a new one. And if you take the new one, and you can see, if I move it, you can see it's already just moving just a little bit in the package. But before we take it out of the package, it's always a good idea to measure the length. So I'm just going to hold these two cables right next to each other and run them down for length. And we can see that we were within, I don't know, maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches. But with as much adjustment as there is on the threaded rod here, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I always like to make sure I check the length or make sure the parts are the same before I open them. That way if I have to return them, there's less hassle. So I'm just going to take this cable out of the bag, and we're going to try to get it routed. Got the cable out of the bag, and just to show that it works so much better, I can just pull this by hand, and you can see that it's moving very easy. So that'll work really good to return with the amount of springs that we have back here. So I'm just going to seal the boot onto the sealing surface there, and you can see I can still use it to go the full length. So what we'll do is, well, since we get the fuel tank out, we have a little bit better access to route this. We'll try to follow the same routing that it had to start with. So back here, I've got a couple of springs and the spacer that goes into the brake lever. So we got these two springs. That's how I found it. I don't know if those two springs are supposed to be on there, but we'll put them both on there for now, and if we find out one's not supposed to be there or it rattles too much, we'll just change it later. But we're going to put these two springs on because they do kind of go inside each other. So we'll put the two springs on, put this slider nut on, and then we'll adjust the brake and we'll at least get started. It looks like the threads are kind of beat up. I'll grab a pair of pliers and kind of start it in slowly. Try not to twist it. So I'm not going to do all the adjustment on this end of the cable because we can make adjustment at both ends of the cable, I'm pretty sure. I'll make a little bit more of an adjustment here. But then we haven't really set the back, so I'll just get this kind of set. Let's pull it to jam it up a little bit, and I'll go to the back and set it. We want this to return all the way closed with the spring on the back. So just like that, we've got the cables adjusted. Let's bring this boot up to keep it protected. But now we got really good brake function back to the handlebar where it's supposed to be. All right, folks. So we took the wheel off, just looking at this rear sprocket here. We're going to have to get it off. I'm going to try to use a crowbar to jam the spindle here. I don't think there's like a ton of force on it, but you know, we can just put that in there and just have it a little bit of resistance while we crack these nuts loose. So I noticed there is a snap ring here. The zinc is locking this on, so I'm going to go and try to remove that. One other thing we have to do is remove the spindle so that we can get the sprocket all the way off. Alright, so we got the sprocket off. It looks like it still needs to come apart a little bit more. I think this hub's just froze on here, so I'm going to take it over to the bench, grab a hammer, and tap it apart and see what happens. Alright, so we get the new sprocket here, and it's a different style of attachment here, so we will be using these small holes and the spacers they sent with it. So we'll slide the sprocket on, get the spacers set, and then we should be okay to kind of start reassembly. So now we get the sprocket on. Even with the new sprocket, you can see there's a lot less play in the chain than there was. So we'll throw these spacers on, and then we'll throw the straps up here, and we should be ready to get this thing back together. I know earlier in the video I said we were done. We do need to put these washers back on and the snap ring, so looks like we're going to have to pull both sides of those straps off to get that done. I wasn't sure if we could slide it in or not, but we are not able to without taking it fully apart. So bear with me. We'll get this right apart and we'll get those components back on. Now that we've got our sprocket on, I'm going to put the spindle on, and I tried to set the other wheel at a time on the clock that I could probably duplicate easy enough. So I set them with the top studs close to 12 o'clock. So just going to try to replicate that. To get it off earlier, you saw me use a 27mm socket. That's a pretty big socket, but I'm going to try something a little different to tighten it up. I'm going to put this rod through here, just like I did for tightening the sprocket up. And that's just going to give us some kind of resistance while we set this. And just like before, we're not going to reuse this cotter pin, so I'll go grab one from my box of cotter pins, and we'll get a replacement in here. Alright folks, so one thing I did do here is I took the original fuel line and I cut it down, cut it so it would fit our fuel filter. And then I took a piece of safety wire and put it on there and twisted it tight to make a nice tight seal on the hose to the filter. And then I've got the one clamp that came with the Honda already. I'm going to put that on the carburetor when I get it all situated here, and let's see if that takes care of our fuel leak issue. I did have a little bit of a problem with this nut right here. This nut was just a bit loose, and I'm not sure if it was from the first time we put it together, if I didn't get it tight enough, or if it is coming loose as it's vibrating, you know, as we use the four-wheeler. But I tightened it up, and we'll see if that gets rid of our fuel leak. Not really seeing any other reason to cause a fuel leak, so let's try to get this back in and get it hooked back up. Alright folks, so I got the fuel line finally hooked up there. It was a little bit of a struggle because the old fuel line doesn't want to flex as much as the new one does, or the newer one did. But the newer one was too big. The inside diameter was too big, letting fuel escape past the barred fitting. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt this tank back in. Can't really leave it loose, that would be bad if we decided to go on a test ride again. We'll get it bolted in, get the body panels bolted up, and then we should be, I'll top it up with fuel, and we'll let it set for a little bit and see if the leaking has stopped or if it still needs more repair. Well, as you can see there, I was just testing the brake against the transmission, so you saw me put it in reverse and try to go, and it just barely moved, and also put it in forward and same action. So I would say that we are good. I'll have to keep an eye on this fuel leak. I think that's going to be solved now as well. Alright folks, that takes care of this episode of CB Rebuilds. Comment down below what you'd like to see next with this old Honda. I think there's still some things to do, but maybe there's something in particular you would like to see. So leave a comment down below and I'll try to get to it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you're able to, and share if you found this interesting so more people can enjoy it. Thanks for watching.